Yeah, I mean, I'm used to rolling with the punches, and through this whole thing, we are rolling with the punches, and we're, we have a very resilient group of people, and it's good.
What does your organization look like overall? Like how many people do you support now through this endeavor?
Yeah, so we have 80 souls in our company that are employees, or actually employee owners. So we're actually an ESOP, and we are
Oh, okay.
employee owners. And then we support our clients that are manufacturing companies, as well as provide infrastructure solutions to people for water and wastewater, power, energy, petrochem. And then we also, with manufacturing, handle food and beverage and pharmaceutical companies
Oh,
as
wow.
well.
You're
Then we
right
also
in
have, yeah, we're
you're
right
in
in a
the
sweet
mix.
spot.
Yeah, yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So we're supporting all of these clients right now that are, as well as they're going through trying to make sure that their manufacturing facilities are staying up and running. And then also helping a lot of them with remote capabilities for doing supervisory control and data acquisition, and being able to make critical decisions from remote locations. So allowing them to kind of teleport into their data and make decisions on their manufacturing processes, especially while they're doing a lot of this process changes, because a lot of these companies are changing what they're making, they're changing what they're packaging into.
Really?
So where they might have been making to commercial, so commercial would be, 50-gallon or 50-pound totes of pepper. Now they're making into cans that are going to consumers. So
Wow.
still making the same volume, but they've got to change the packaging up.
This is interesting. So do the manufacturers you support, then are they having to like figure out ways to do this remote, like on the fly manage their systems and such? Like how does that work?
Well, they are. I mean, the people that run the plants are actually in the plants being socially distant. But remotely, what's happening is some of the people that are making process control, operational decisions, using data from these systems to make operational decisions, a lot of them are being placed remote, so that they're further social distant, but we're allowing them to do their jobs that way. Same thing with our people in water and wastewater. Down south, closer to where you are, one of our clients is the largest water facility down in the Prince George's, Montgomery County area,
Yeah, yeah.
and they are operating a lot of this remotely unless they have to place hands on things. So they can bring all that up securely on their laptops or other devices, even iPads and things like that, and see the status of a remote pumping station, because there's actually more effluent moving right now from municipalities. It's moving from people's homes versus moving from businesses.
Okay.
Um, it's still the same amount. It's just coming from different places now.
So it's putting kind of a stress on essentially if you've got water treatment plants, that are used to receiving from commercial buildings during the middle
Right.
of the day. It's now coming right from people's houses. Okay.
Absolutely. And people are seeing that in other industries as well. It doesn't affect us as much. Actually, it did affect us a little bit. We have a Richmond, Virginia operation in the Chesterfield County area,
Okay.
which is a very large population of Capital One employees.
Yeah.
And Capital One, their implementation of their remote worker solution is a very high volume throughput VPN. So our workers that work in those neighborhoods that are using Comcast and Verizon and things like that are finding slower speeds, in addition to children that are using those things for gaming and everything else. So it's affecting other critical infrastructure that's going on as well.
Oh, that's crazy. Well, it's fascinating to me on how people are. It's actually quite a thought exercise and now a practical exercise in how you run business continuity operations,
Mm-hmm.
and not just yourself, but then you're helping other customers that are in business continuity operations mode.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's really, it's really interesting. So we actually, we have a very good business continuity plan, and about 6 weeks ago, we actually were sending representatives of different departments to work from home
Okay.
in their job role to see if their role had any gaps of being able to perform their job function remotely.
Now,
And
is there anything that you have found, Tom, in doing this that you're really glad you had thought through ahead of time that now you're like, okay, that makes sense that we would test that earlier?
yeah, well, there's two pieces of that question, or I have two pieces of that answer.
Okay.
One is we made a strategic decision as the IT leadership in 2014 to move to the cloud.
Mm.
So we just recently wrapped up 6 years later our last piece of technology that is cloud-based. Now we do have server virtual server environments that are within our offices that are accessible through very secure VPN that allows us to do some of our job functions. But the rest of it that is non-critical is we've placed it up in the cloud.
Okay.
So that migration, which, if someone's going through this now and this has just happened over the last 90 days, it's probably not viable.
Yeah.
But we made a conscious decision about 5-6 years ago because we're such a remote organization to be able to do that. The other thing is we had an event that occurred last fall that exposed to us that we had a hole in our disaster recovery planning.
Okay.
So through a process that we use internally, some people call it root cause analysis. I don't call it that. We use an Army technique, which is called and you may be familiar with it, Bill. It's called the after action review.
No, I haven't heard that.
Yeah, so we use that invasively in our business to look at situations where something has occurred and we think it should have occurred in a different manner. So it's a non-judgmental analysis of a situation to decide what was the real outcome that you expected to have. And then we had to make some infrastructure changes because of that. And those actually landed right at the end of January. So that put us in a position, that I feel very comfortable. I was actually asked pointedly yesterday by our strategic advisory board, what impact is this having on our department, the IT department, taking our entire population remote? And I said, we saw an increase of 3 calls.
Oh, wow. Wow. That's fantastic. That's great. And that's called the after action review.
After action review. And it's an Army technique. It's been in use for over 50 years.
Yeah, that's interesting. I had a Navy SEAL commander on my show a couple of years ago, and they called it a hot wash, I think it's called.
Sure.
Basically, I don't know if it's similar at all, but it sounds, as you explain it, like after the test, after the deployment's done, like what worked, what didn't work, and how do you get better from it?
Absolutely, and it may be something we talk about in a podcast in the future, because really you look at what occurred to just state the facts, not your opinion. So you use I'm really well versed at facilitating them. Is you're not making judgments or of what happened. You're just reporting the facts.
Okay.
And then once you report the facts, you go, okay, what would you have expected to happen? You list out if the power line was cut and these things happen, what would you have expected to occur? And it's very interesting is through that process, and you bring different constituents that are involved in that process, not just the technologists, but you bring the business leaders, and then we always bring in a red herring.
Okay.
So we always bring in somebody who had nothing to do with the event. Okay, totally unbiased opinion, totally non-emotional, not a technologist. Sometimes it could be just somebody, and I don't mean this in a demeaning way, but it could be somebody as simple as the receptionist at the front door.
Yeah.
And say, just listen, and what do you hear? And what do you think? And usually they come up with the most brilliant ideas because they're so simple that the very technology related people look totally over them.
And it's a great way to do it. So you're coming out with any sort of a preconceived ideas, a kind of a layering of previous trauma.
Right.
it's just totally a blank slate.
Absolutely. So we did that on that particular event and came up with 4 or 5 solution paths, and some of them were just as simple as we didn't have updated cell phone numbers in our emergency list. The key people did, but not everybody. So
Sure.
our secondary communication paths were challenged. So that's as simple as update your employee record.
Okay. So it fleshed out all of the vulnerabilities ahead of time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So as we wrap up, Tom, is there anything that you see sort of from the sky is falling perspective, around you, from the outside stimulus, not within your business, but the outside stimulus that is affecting people in such a way that you're having to step up and kind of lead from a different perspective now? Is there a different leadership traits that you're never thought you'd have to deal with at this point?
And I'll have to pull this up real quick so that I can get it correct. But
Okay.
I just of course I don't have it close to my hand.
No problem.
And I'll send it to you later. Is someone said to me is as a leader, I have to look at things broader than just people's roles as employees and the roles that they have, because each one of these people and all of my staff have children. All of my staff members are being members of InSource. They're being a parent, they're being a teacher, and they're being a spouse in most cases.
Yeah.
And in each one of those situations, I'm having to spend a fair amount of time just helping to counsel them and let them know everything's going to be okay. If you can't get that work done today, we're shifting priorities and just saying, okay, let's reprioritize, let's slice out the top most important things.
Sure.
And just relax, because that's when we make mistakes. So as a leader, I'm spending more time letting people know it's going to be okay.
Yeah, I think there's nothing. It's interesting. This event I was talking to. We had a all hands meeting, and I was letting people know that the neuroscience around this is really interesting, because I just had a guy serendipitously in my office for a podcast 2 weeks ago. We're just when Washington D.C. was starting to shut down events to go from like 20 to 10, and he said, and he interviewed the top 36 neuroscientists in the planet, and this is specifically within our human biology. We've never experienced this type of a threat, so there's no known model for it. So when we go out and we're cold, we know there's a model. We don't do well in cold, so we can be afraid of the cold, but we know how to deal with the cold. We know how to deal if we're show up in a ghetto, or we know there's a known threat parameter. We just know certain things, and through 50, 100,000 years of evolution. But this one here doesn't hit it. The subconscious doesn't know how to deal with it. The unknown is so vast that it really trips people's whole psychology out. And so just knowing, just as you were saying, the leadership part of this, letting people know it's going to be okay, because it is very unsettling for people to be in unknown times.
Well, it is. It's very unsettling, and when you don't know what the outcome is, and like in our business, we have a lot of computer science type people, very science oriented people, and this thing with what's going on is more about art than it is about science, But it was kind of funny is until this morning with my children. I have a 13 and a 16-year-old, and I was talking, and they're both very intelligent kids. And we're just talking about, everybody's saying, wash your hands, use hand sanitizer, socially distant, all this kind of stuff. And I
Yeah.
broke it down and I said, the thing that's really interesting about this particular, someone had sent me an article that this particular virus is it's not biologic. So it's DNA wrapped around fat. It has fat wrapped around it to help protect it. Okay, and then it moves and it can't come through good skin. It can only come through broken skin, mucus, whatever. So the fat gets broken down by heat because it gets melted.
Sure.
It gets broken down by soap. It gets broken down by alcohol,
Okay.
all these types of things. So when I talk to my kids that are old enough to understand this, is that once you remove its protective layer, it dies.
Mm.
And if it can't find a host, it dies on its own because the fat doesn't have anything to re-energize back around. So it's just, and my son was just like, Dad, it's just fat. We just need to wash the fat. And I was like, right. That's really what it comes down to, is distance and washing the fat away. And so I've been telling that story to my employees, and they're like, now it makes sense. I get it. It's starting to click. And so that's what we have to help them with.
It's great. And it's making things known, right? And then the unknown pathogen or the unknown contagion,
Sure.
more concrete for people.
Well, and when, and I'm not going to speak to our political leaders. I think they're doing great jobs. And I also think in some places they're not doing great jobs. But one of the things is when we talk about the silent killer, we can abstract it down to a DNA cell or an RNA cell wrapped by fat.
Yeah.
And the idea is melt the fat, dry your clothes warmer, wash your clothes warmer, wash your hands in warm water. Okay.
I love it. I love it. Well, Tom, I only asked you for a couple minutes to hear your wisdom, and we'll have to do this again sometime in the future. But there's a lot of people out there that need to know that the sky is not falling, and there are winds happening, and that I appreciate you for sharing your wisdom today.
We're all in it together. I'm going to share with you just a quick anecdote.
Please do.
I have my brother-in-law owns a dental lab. Makes dentures and crowns. They use milling machines, 3D printing, all this kind of stuff, very high-tech stuff. And their business is basically disappearing, okay? Disappearing because no one can do dental procedures, okay? Yeah. I just got a picture just a few moments ago of the first 3D printed shield. Out of their 3D printing, they brought in different materials with their same 3D printing machines, and now they're printing shields for medical workers. So what I'm really empowered by is just the ingenuity of our society. And I look at what Dyson is doing in making ventilators. They're changing their factory around, and they're tooling up right now for 15,000 ventilators. The Dyson vacuum people. These are the things that we just got to keep reminding people, is that we've got a lot of really cool innovation out there, and we're going to beat it. It's going to take time, and yes, people are going to die, and that's unfortunate. But at the end of the day, we're going to come out a better society.
Yeah, 100%. And then I think people used to say that the best generation was one after World War II and the one in World War II. But and sort of lots of complaints about the current generation and even yours and I's generation. It's like you can never reach. Well, guess what? Now's the time. Now's the time for the whole society to rise up, just like it rose up then. Even more than 9/11.
Absolutely. And the last piece of that is when our kids have children, this time will be their moment, like when we tell the story that we went to school uphill in 2 feet of snow each way, walking with flip-flops. Okay, this is going to be their story, where they were actually had to lock down at home, but continued with e-learning and other things like that. This is going to be their story.
My kids are the same age, roughly the same age as yours, 19, 16, and 14. So it's just an amazing time for them to kind of go through this, and completely different skills for both our kids, our employees. I mean, it goes across. So
you bet.
It's great, Tom. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Really generous with your time today. Thank you.
It was a pleasure talking with you, and not in a public speaking role. But I look forward to sometime to finally have that coffee with you and chat, because I really feel a special spirit with you, and I really appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you again. And again, thanks for your generosity.
Super.
Bye-bye.
Have a good day. Thank you.